You had an idea, a concept, or even a storyline. You immediately set off on a journey to write a screenplay for a movie. Halfway through the process, the excitement waned out. Did you ever experience this?
I feel completely lost.
There is a strong chance that you had not structured your screenplay before you began writing. In this video, let's look at what is the three-act structure and trace its origin. Does it restrict you or empower you? Is the three-act structure outdated? If so, what's the alternative? Let's find out. The three-act story rhythm was the foundation of story art for centuries, even before Aristotle first noted it around 2,000 years ago. A good story always had this structure built in. Not everyone is gifted to tell a story organically without learning about the structure. Screenplays, too, which are only 100 years old, require a similar structure. What do all stories have in common? According to Jean-Luc Godard, they have a beginning, middle, and an end, not necessarily in that order. Let's see if we can find this in nature. Birth, life, and death? Isn't that a beginning, middle, and end? Another example. Morning, afternoon, evening. It's always the same, but different, just like stories. The screenplay is made up of 3 parts, which are called acts. The most popular model for a 3-act structure came from Syd Field in the 70s. Let's take a closer look at his paradigm of a screenplay. Every screenplay has a beginning, middle, and an end. In Act 1, the screenwriter sets up the story, establishes character, informs what the story is about, and creates the relationships between the main character and the other characters. Act 1 is generally 30 pages long, which forms the first 30 minutes of a typical 2-hour movie. A thumb rule to remember here is, 1 page of screenplay is approximately 1 minute of screen time. Act 2 is approximately 60 pages long and is held together with the dramatic context known as confrontation. During the second act, the main character encounters numerous obstacles that keep him from achieving what he wants. Act 3 is 20 to 30 pages long and is held together with the dramatic context, known as resolution. In other words, what is the solution of your screenplay? Does your main character live or die?
I want to die.
Succeed or fail? Get married or not? But this brings up another question. How do you get from Act 1 to Act 2? And how do you get from Act 2 to Act 3? The answer is to create a plot point at the end of both Act 1 and Act 2. A plot point is defined as any incident, episode, or event that hooks into the action and spins it around in another direction. In simple words, it's a turning point. Syd Field calls it a plot point. Robert Mckee calls it a major reversal.
What's in a name?
A plot point is always a function of the main character. If we take a look at the matrix, we can see plot points 1 and 2 precisely placed. At plot point 1, Neo chooses the red pill, and Act 2 begins when he is literally reborn. At plot point 2, Neo and Trinity rescue Morpheus, and only then does Neo accept the truth that he is the one. Plot points do not have to be big dynamic scenes or sequences. They can be quiet scenes in which a decision is made. Take the sequence in American Beauty, where Lester and his wife are at the high school basketball game. He sees his daughter's friend, Angela, performing at halftime. He is bowled over, not by her performance, but her sheer beauty. There may be many plot points during the course of the storyline, but the focus is only on the plot points 1 and 2, because these 2 events are the anchoring moments. Page numbers are only a guideline to indicate approximately where the story progresses to the next level. You don't have to hit the plot point at a specific page number indicated in the paradigm. The 3-act structure is meant to liberate you, not suffocate you. The inciting incident. The inciting incident occurs somewhere around the 10th page, but in some cases, it can be the opening scene itself. It serves 2 important functions in the craft of storytelling. 1, it sets the story in motion, and 2, it grabs the attention of the reader and audience. Well, That was Syd Field's paradigm of screenplay. But what if the movie is 3 hours long, or say 2.5 hours? Do we divide the acts proportionately and hit the page numbers accordingly? Will the same paradigm work? In the book on dramatic theory, Poetics, Aristotle states that there is a relationship between the length of the story and the number of major turning points necessary to tell that story. Effectively, the longer the length of a movie or a screenplay, the more the number of turning points. Robert Mckee, in his book Story, states that a story can be told in one act. This is the prose short story, the one-act play, or the student or experimental film of perhaps 5 to 20 minutes. A story can be told in 2 acts, 2 major reversals, and it's over, suiting the sitcom, the novella, or hour-length play. But when a story reaches a certain magnitude, the feature film, an hour-long TV episode, the full-length play, the novel, 3 acts is the minimum. The first act typically consumes about 25% of the telling. The last act should ideally be the shortest of all. In the last act, we want to give the audience a sense of acceleration, a swiftly rising action to climax. Here we go, Paw Patrol. So last acts are generally brief, 20 minutes or less. This rhythm creates an Act 2 that's 70 minutes long. If an otherwise well-told story bogs down, that's where it'll happen. How then does the writer solve the problem of the long second act? By creating more acts. The 3-act design is the minimum. Create a major reversal in the middle of Act 2, which is the midpoint of the screenplay. Hollywood films have been following this path for years. A major turning point in the middle of the film. Consider the Indian movie. There is an interval at the midpoint which calls for a twist or a major plot point. Why would the audience return for the second half after a 15-minute break, unless they are lured into it? A lot of the Indian commercial cinema has 4 acts instead of 3. Works for them. Accelerates the pace of the second act and breaks it into 2 acts. A film could have a Shakespearean rhythm of 5 acts, 4 weddings, and a funeral. Raiders of the Lost Ark is told in 7 acts. Generally, a 3-act story requires 4 memorable scenes. The inciting incident that opens the screenplay, and an Act 1, Act 2, and Act 3 climax. In the inciting incident of Kramer versus Kramer, Mrs. Kramer walks out on her husband and her son. In the Act 1 climax, she returns, demanding custody of the child. In the Act 2 climax, the court awards custody of the son to his mother. In the Act 3 climax, like her ex-husband, she realizes that they must act selflessly for the best interest of the child they love, and returns the boy to Kramer. 4 powerful turning points spanned with excellent scenes and sequences. When the writer multiplies acts, he's forcing the invention of 5, perhaps 6, 7, 8, 9, or more brilliant scenes. This becomes a creative task beyond his reach, so he resorts to the cliches that infest so many action films. The multiplication of acts reduces the impact of climaxes and results in repetitiousness.
Repeat it. Repeat it. Repeat it.
Even if the writer feels he's up to creating a major reversal every 15 minutes, boredom sets in. Before too long, the audience is yawning. This is why a 3-act central plot with subplots has become a kind of standard. It provides complexity and avoids repetition. It's better to create a subplot in the second act rather than creating more than 4 acts. In conclusion, just because a screenplay is well-structured and fits the paradigm, it doesn't mean that it's a good screenplay or a good movie. Many other elements come together in the process of stitching a story or a screenplay. We will discuss all the elements involved in telling a good story and writing a great screenplay on my channel through videos like this one. As Syd Field says, structure is not a formula, it's a form. In my opinion, there are very few gifted writers who can just get it right organically without bothering about the fundamentals and the principles of screenwriting. Kudos to them. But, for most of us, learning the craft of screenwriting makes more sense. When the gifted writer falters one day, it will be hard for him to analyze where he went wrong, and harder for him to pick up the pieces and start his journey again. Understand the principles and break the rules, rather than ignoring them. Please like this video if you found it interesting, and don't forget to subscribe to this channel.